Hey, Marijuana Nation, host Shay Gunther here with a quick bit before we jump into today's news. I just want to thank you all for unknowingly helping me develop my youth ultimate frisbee team. Regular listeners know that one of the things that I do when I'm not working on marijuana news is coaching my youth ultimate frisbee team up here in Maine, which I would hazard I take just as seriously as I do my work here at MJ Today Media. Which is to say, I'm fairly obsessed with making my program the best it can be. As part of that drive, I spend a couple of months in the fall each year teaching all of the fifth graders in my town how to play Ultimate Frisbee in their gym classes at school. I've been cracking away most recently at that and just wrapped up my volunteering this week, so the shows should end up getting published a touch earlier each day starting next week, at least until next fall comes back around. So thank you very much. This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by MJ Today Media, publishers of this show, our weekly title Marijuana Today, and the Green Rush and Weed Wonks podcasts. If you have a legal marijuana business, product, service, or brand that you need to sell and promote, then we are the best spend in legal cannabis marketing. Podcast advertising reaches audiences like no other medium around, and we have the biggest audience in the biz. Zip me an email to shay@mjtodaymedia.com with Shay spelled S-H-E-A to learn more about how we can help you get started. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Friday, November 22nd, 2019, and you're tuned into episode 846 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. We start today's news off out west, where California state officials have revoked the business license for marijuana company Cushy Punch, a month or so after the company was raided for producing unlicensed marijuana products, with $21 million in illegal products in all seized by police. More than 7,000 illicit vaporizer cartridges were grabbed in those raids that came right at the height of the national vape health crisis, which have been attributed mostly to illicit market vaporizers. Bart Shainman has more on this if you want it. Christian Davenport with the Washington Post has our second headline on the day with a story about a bit of a disparity in how NASA chose to treat the two companies SpaceX and Boeing in terms of recent safety reviews. Boeing has been in the headlines a lot over the last year or so, of course, for the corners its designers cut in its new 737 MAX airplanes, neglect that led to the deaths of 346 people killed when Boeing airplanes flew themselves into the ground. And SpaceX has been in the news recently because its CEO Elon Musk smoked pot while on the Joe Rogan podcast. I will leave it to you to guess which company NASA required to go through an intensive round of safety reviews and which one it let slide. If you have your cynical hat on today, you'll have guessed correctly that NASA made SpaceX go through an intensive safety review process because Elon smoked up with Joe, but they let Boeing slide. It's a pretty good snapshot of just how stupid and illogical the federal prohibition on marijuana is and the kind of dumb stories like this that can result. Not a big fan of knocking NASA in general, but they kind of picked the wrong company to prove its safety practices here. And finally for today, Fast Company is reporting that even though the country has been gripped by fears of vaporizer-related health problems, sales of vaporizer companies are not actually looking too bad. According to data from industry analyst Headset, which has point-of-sales data from dispensaries, vaporizer sales in Washington state actually went up after a proposed ban was announced, mostly on the backs of deep discounts offered up by retailers. That's been balancing out a lot of the potential drop in vaporizer sales as consumers are tempted by low prices to ignore fears over vaping. There is also a drive created by bans for consumers to stock up ahead of sales being shut down. Not a bad one to read in full today. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out on headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, MJ Today Media, publishers of this show, our weekly title Marijuana Today, and the Green Rush and Weed Wonks podcasts. One of the cool things about our small but growing little network of legal marijuana podcasts is that it gives us flexibility to work with marketing budgets of all sizes, from the largest of national cannabis brands to the smallest of small mom and pop shops. Whatever the size of your market cap, you have a marketing home here at MJ Today Media. Podcast marketing is easily one of the best ways to spread your marketing message, and there's no better place in legal cannabis than to do it with us. We've been publishing now for more than 5 years and have built up a listenership of more than 30,000 total badass listeners who are likely to either be working in legal marijuana or who are actively transitioning in. And that's who you want to speak to. Email me today at shay@mjtodaymedia.com to learn more about how we can help you get your spots locked in. And because we offer category exclusivity at certain levels, you can also block out your competition. What could be better than that? Drop me an email to shay@mjtodaymedia.com to get started, with Shay spelled S-H-E-A. All right, time for the blitz. Boston.com spent some time speaking with Stephen Hoffman, chair of the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission, to talk about how things have gone in that state in the first year it's had legal adult use marijuana, and to chat about what's to come for the Bay State industry. Mr. Hoffman has 4 more years left in his 5-year term, so I think it's probably a good idea to give this one a read so as to better understand the motivations of the guy overseeing one of the nation's most robust adult use markets. Keeping our sights pegged in Massachusetts, and more specifically on the state's Cannabis Control Commission, we have a bunch of numbers just released by the CCC showing how Massachusetts legal marijuana sales fared in its first year of operations, tallying just under $400 million in all. Right now, there are 33 adult use shops open in Massachusetts, with 54 more in the final stages of getting up and running. So expect next year's number to be even bigger. The state has 227 total licensed marijuana businesses when you add in cultivators, processors, testing labs, and micro businesses. Hopping down the eastern seaboard to Florida, we have some numbers out of that sunny state where 113,922 pounds of marijuana flower were sold this year in the 6-month span between April and September. Florida lawmakers did not free up cannabis flower to be sold to patients until March, which is why the state has just 6 months of sales in that vertical to track. Florida had 291,865 registered patients as of September 30th, 44% of whom are smoking flower. 1,487 doctors in Florida have recommended their patients use medical cannabis, though just 134 of those are responsible for 61% of the state's total patient load. Next month, Virginia's Attorney General is hosting what he is calling a cannabis summit with state lawmakers to talk about more progressive cannabis policy reforms. Attorney General Mark Herring just sent out invitations to his marijuana meeting, which will be built around 4 panel discussions taking place about decriminalization, social equity, hemp, CBD, and the legislative path to legalization. The summit will be held in Richmond, Virginia on December 11th. You can pop over to Kyle Yeager's piece on this one for more. A new study just published by a team of researchers with the University of New Mexico shows that the legalization of marijuana is pushing down the sales of pharmaceutical sleep aids, which is obviously not good if you work for one of the companies selling over-the-counter drugs like Benadryl or Unisom, but I would say is probably good news for the rest of us. The team of researchers examined local sales data for pharmaceutical sleep aids in places where new dispensaries open up. They found that when a new legal cannabis shop comes to town, the town folks buy less Benadryl. California is raising the tax it tacks on to legal marijuana sales as of January 1st. The state's Department of Tax and Fee Administration just announced the new tax hike, which should go over just great in an industry that many observers think is already overtaxed as is. John Schroyer at Marijuana Business Daily has all the numbers here. Kyle's back to end our day and week with a pickup of a letter sent on Wednesday by Oregon Senators Ron Wyden and Jeff Merkley to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, asking that it make a series of changes to the proposed set of regulations for governing how industrial hemp is grown, processed, and sold. The two senators asked in particular that the USDA expand the time farmers have after a harvest to test their crops, that independent labs be allowed to participate in the process, and that the maximum cutoff for THC content in hemp be expanded. The other two changes requested, which you can read about in detail over on Kyle's story, concerns where hemp plants are actually cut for testing, and the request that decarboxylation not be done ahead of THC testing. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again Monday morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, MJ Today Media, and to our awesome Patreon listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the Patreon listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today.
One take, Shay. One take.